This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I am so excited to introduce our guest today, a National Football League veteran wide receiver who played for the Buffalo Bills, the Carolina Panthers, the Green Bay Packers, a Super Bowl champion, and a star of one of the most memorable plays in NFL history, Mr. Don Beebe. Hall of Fame coach Marv Levy is quoted as saying, "Don Beebe showed what a fighting heart is all about. He gave everything he had all the time." Hall of Fame quarterback Brett Favre, quote, "We would have never won Super Bowl 31 without Don Beebe." Hall of Fame quarterback Jim Kelly, "Don Beebe played the game the right way, both on and off the field." Beebe, one of the fastest players in league history, played for 6 Super Bowl teams, eventually hosting the Lombardi Trophy with the Green Bay Packers. In his post-NFL career, Beebe has created the House of Speed, which has helped over 60,000 young athletes elevate their game. Beebe is currently the head coach at Aurora University and helps lead the team to a series of conference championships and a 34-0 conference record over the last few years. As an inspiring leader and coach, Beebe talks on this episode about how his career in the NFL taught him about the power of communication and character, while his faith and family helped guide his way. Let's dig into stories about the greatest comeback in NFL playoff history, the emotion of 4 Super Bowl appearances and losses, and the worldly impact of a single play, with an inspirational look on how to be our best self and how to lead for others. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I am Dave Thompson, your host, and I am with Mr. Don Beebe. How are you, Don?
I'm doing great, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time today. I know you're a busy man, and I'm excited for so many reasons. Not only I had to fan out today and wear my
I love it.
And in case we've got listeners from all over the place, so I figured in case anybody's upset with me, I have my secondary Packers
Oh,
Packers shirt, but
you're all
no
decked out today.
no Panthers gear though, so we can
No,
avoid.
that's okay. That's okay.
Well, Don, thanks for joining. I know all of our episodes have really been focused on communication, a lot of which in kind of the investigative space, but you've got just such a tremendous career and experience, even post NFL career, impacting others, where I feel like communication internally and externally has just been a driving force for everything, and that's what I wanted to really talk about today.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I know in the beginning of your career, and you obviously can walk us through more of this more specifically, but you tell a story in your latest devotional, Never Give Up, which I thought was just really inspirational to read. But you tell a story about a pro day back in 1987, so I'm going to bring you back a little bit,
Yeah.
and where there was an opportunity for you to maybe show off your speed, but you may not have been quite prepared for that day.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. This was, I graduated from high school in '83 and had a full ride scholarship to Western Illinois. I left after 2 weeks and went back home, and I worked construction for 3 years. Wasn't playing football. Did a little school here and there, but wasn't a full-time student much at all. And just working construction. But then I'm a man of faith, and 3 years later, I just really felt a calling to go back and play football, but I had no idea where to turn. Western Illinois calls me out of the blue, and I decided to go back. Well, I went back and landed up. This would have been the fall of '86, and then I was transfer credit. I was short, and I had to leave again, and then come back now in the spring of '87, which you're referring to right now. And I always tell people, I said, my pro career started before I ever played one down of college football. Think about that for a second. I'm not sure that's ever been done before. But this is how God works. God does the unbelievable. And I literally am in math class on the 3rd floor of this one building. And I would come down the stairs every day from this math class. I would walk around Western Hall. And Western Hall at Western Illinois was the indoor track, and where they would, run and do certain things. And the coaches' offices were in there as well. Well, I would always walk around that and go back to Wetzel Hall, my dorm, and get food and go to my next class. But this day, I just happened to walk into Western Hall, and there was guys that were going to be seniors that I just practiced with all spring, fall, or all spring drills. I was there. Landed up winning the X receiver job, which is crazy in itself. And they were running the 40-yard dash for what I came to find out, NFL scouts. There were 5 of them there that day. So I walk up to coach and, I'm just coming out of class now. I'm in a tank top, jeans, shorts, and sandals. And I walk up to coach and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he tells me, "Oh, it's pro day. Every Division I program has a pro day." I said, "Okay, pro day." I really didn't know what that was. He goes, "Well, there's NFL scouts here running timing guys in the 40 and doing other drills." And I was like, "I'm going to be a senior." I said, I would love to be able to run and participate. He goes, "Oh, Don," he says, "you're not on any film. You've never played before." He's basically saying, let's just let it go. And I was persistent in a nice way. I just said, "Man, coach, I would love to run. It'd be so cool." So he walks down the track about 40, 50 yards or so, talking to this Dallas scout. Now, ironically, a Dallas scout started my career, which I really struggle with, but that's an aside.
We'll stay away from
Yeah.
that.
and you could see that the guy was just like, yeah, let him run. Who cares, right? So he comes back. He says, "Donnie, just get in line." I said, "Coach, can I go get my running shoes, and let me warm up a little bit?" "Nope, just get in line, kick off your sandals, get in line." So I did. So this was the first time, Dave, I ever have run the 40. I had no idea what I could run. I knew I could run fast, but I didn't know how fast in the 40. I didn't even know really what times were actually really good either. So I got done and running, and those scouts never talked to anybody. Even to this day, I go to so many pro days. Those scouts never talk to players ever. And then I'm done running, pitter patter down the track mind you, and I'm coming back, and the Dallas scout is on a beeline for me because there comes that star in the chest, right at me. He goes, "What?" He goes, "What's your name?" I said, "Well, I'm Don Beebe." Don Beebe. He goes, "Well, what number are you on film?" "Well, I'm a 5th-year senior. I've never played before." He starts laughing at me. He goes, "Son, I've been doing this 21 years. I've never timed anybody this fast." He showed me the watch. It was a 4.32. And I looked at him, and I wasn't joking. I was kind of serious. I said, "Is that good?" he laughed some more. And so my pro career actually started before I ever played it down. So he said, "We're going to keep our eye on you." But that's how God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. And what the other lesson I got from that was to seize the opportunity, right? I think a lot of
Yeah.
people wait for the moment, but there was a kind of a calling that day, and the opportunity was there, and you took it.
Yeah, you never know when that's going to happen. I always tell players in coaching them, I said, "You're one play away. And if you're unprepared and you're not ready, okay, either you don't know the plays, you don't know where to line up, you don't know what you're doing, and then that moment comes, you're going to fail. And then that might be the only chance you get." And for me, uh, in the realm of I was ready spiritually, because I didn't have to study X's and O's at the time. We just went through spring ball, and I was just ready for the moment. That when that moment came, I was ready with the right mindset of who I was trying to please and play for, right? So I was able to have that opportunity, and God gave me that. So anyway,
Yeah, well, I think, and that's you told another story which I think relates to the same thing about a couple years later, you find yourself in the Buffalo Bills,
yeah,
and you described the your first NFL catch, and so I'll let
yeah,
you obviously describe it. But the part that I thought was really kind of interesting to me is your whole life, or at least part of your life, your dream of this moment of like I'm going to be on the NFL, I'm going to catch this ball, I want the opportunity, whatever your career is, you dream for that kind of pinnacle moment, and now you have the opportunity to do it. And I have to imagine the anxiety is more so thinking like, please don't throw me the ball.
yeah.
What is that feeling like? So the moment's there, but what's the anxiety look like? What are you thinking at that time?
Well, again, you get into these moments, and here we are. I was the first pick in the '89 draft, so a lot of pressure was already on me to perform. Okay, from the media and people and fans and stuff to that. And I didn't play in the first 2 games. Now this was before the K gun and no huddle offense that evolved the next year. But in '89, we were just a 2 wide receiver set, and the third guy would come in on third downs. So it was Andre Reed and Chris Burkett. Okay, the first 2 guys, and then it was Flip Johnson was number 3, and I was 4 on the depth chart, so I didn't play. Well, Jim Kelly goes to Marv Levy on that Tuesday, which is our day off in the NFL. He says, "Listen, we drafted this guy to play. We need to get him on the field." So they released Chris Burkett that day. Thank you, Jim.
Right.
Okay. Uh, and then I slid into the number 3 spot. Well, we're playing in a nationally televised game that third week against the Houston Oilers down in the Astrodome, the iconic dome at that time in the late '80s. And so I called mom and dad and the whole family and said, "Hey, I'm going to play. I'm going to get in this game." So the first time I get in the game, first play on third down, it was a run play. And Chris Dishman's getting right up in my face and he's talking trash to me. And I'm like, holy smokes, is this what it's like? Uh, but it was just a moment. And then the second third down I get in, this would have been, kind of that moment. I'm in the huddle, and Jim says, as we're about to break the huddle, he says, "Beebe, if Dishman is pressed on you, if he's pressed on you again, I'm throwing to you. Just go deep. Forget what you got run," because I was supposed to run a post corner. So I'm literally running up the line of scrimmage. I'm like, "Okay, Lord, here we go." I mean, this is the moment, right? This guy is going to throw me the ball. I got to win, right? So I get one of the best releases I've ever done in my whole career. God, I 3 yards past Chris Dishman. I'm just running away from him. God, and I literally turn. And Jim used to throw a really high ball. It looked like a punt. He would throw a really high pass, especially on his deep balls. And I turned and looked, and I lost it in the dome lights. And I'm not kidding you. If this play happened again later in my career, I would drop 10 out of 10. I would have never caught this ball. Because what happened next was literally a miracle, because I turned, lost it in lights. I kind of just stuck my right hand out, and it hit my right hand and kind of stuck to it. Okay. And I got my left hand quickly and then brought it in, and then had the ability to stay in bounds and then outrun Dishman to the end zone. I'm humble enough to say that was a divine intervention that happened in that play, because I lost it literally in the lights. And I just stuck my hand out there guessing, to be honest with you. And I pulled it in. And then it kind of set the tone, for my career in Buffalo.
Yeah, unbelievable. First catch to be 63-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
That set
63-yard bomb.
Does that set the standard for you then? It's like I need to catch I got to go just 10 for 10, 10 touchdowns on my first reception. So that set the standard a little high.
Well, it did set a standard that I had to do as the Bills' first pick. I mean, that's sure. I mean, if I'd have dropped that, I mean, who knows? My career could have been over very quickly.
Right.
And then it happened again against the Dolphins in Rich Stadium a couple weeks later, where I caught another 63-yard bomb against Johnson, their DB that year. Or that week. So I was getting to the point where I was making big plays, and that's what they drafted me for and wanted me for, to open it up for Andre Reed. And so they couldn't double him with James Lofton on one side and me on the other. They had a hard time being able to do that because we could get vertical.
Yeah. Right. Well, and so I can't even imagine the pressure in that circumstance. And I've been to several Bills games and other NFL games or whatever, and I'm thinking, you've got 80,000 fans, give or take, screaming and shouting, singing the shout song, and they're singing the national anthem, and you've got, now you got millions of people watching on TV, and then you've got family watching, and you've got your teammates watching. How much of that outside energy or pressure do you feel like are you feeling in that moment, or are you able to just kind of control the mechanism and focus?
Well, each guy does this differently now. I don't think everybody does it. This is the cookie cutter thing to do. There are some key factors to what you can do. For me, I think different people handle it different, like I said. But for me, it came down to, what was my identity in? Okay, is my identity really in a football player? And I had to learn through this, because I used to listen to the pressures, and it did affect me at times in a game. I wasn't quite sure if I could make the play, and I had doubt. It looked like I was playing for my family, or I was playing for the coach, his opinion, or the fans' opinion. Even though those are okay, it's going to be hard to really focus on what is at hand until you really understand your true identity. So for me, as I went through my career, it landed up becoming, listen, this isn't about Don as a football player. This is about the platform that God gave me in sports, because the story where I came from, I should have never played in the NFL. I'll be honest with you, never. Okay, it was God's calling on my life. I just followed it and listened to it. Okay, and trained very hard and earned things in life, which a lot of people, I think, miss their calling and miss their really what they're doing, because they're too lazy, or it's all about them, and then they get caught up in these things that become issues for them as they go through life. For me, I learned very quick in my life that football was important, but not the most important. And then once you get to the NFL, then you're like, okay, now you see money, fame, all these things that the world teaches you that really, to be honest with you, comes up empty. Okay. I don't get my joy and my peace from those things. So in essence, Dave, I learned as I kept playing what truly was my identity in, which was him. And I was able to really enjoy those last few years because of that. The first few years I missed out on a lot of joy. I tell this story quite often too. Um, when I first got to Buffalo, my receiver coach was Nick Nicolau, an old Portuguese guy,
Yeah.
5'8" guy. I mean, just a ball of fire, man. And he just drove me. I mean, every little thing I did wrong, he would drive me. And it was just the point is like, dude, relax, man. I mean, I got it, and stuff of that nature. But it started to affect me as a player because I started thinking that coach didn't like me. Okay. And I wasn't kind of fitting in because he wouldn't do that to Andre and James so much. But, they're Hall of Famers and I get it. And they were older. Okay. So, but, when you're going through the fire, man, it's like, okay, why are you picking on him? Right. We all think that as athletes. So here I am. My career's over. I'm 2 years out of, in retirement, and I'm walking through the airport in San Diego, and who do I run into? Who I haven't seen since my third year in the league because he left Buffalo and then came in, or after my second year, actually. My receiver coach came in, Charlie Joyner. And I'm walking through the airport, and Nick sees me. I see Nick, and I say, hey, Coach, how you doing? He goes, hey, Donnie, how you doing, man? I hadn't seen you in a long time. And he goes, hey, you got a moment to sit down? I said, yeah, sure, I'd love to sit down. I haven't seen you. And first thing out of his mouth, Dave, was this. He says, man, Donnie, I got to tell you something. You were my favorite player I ever coached. And you know what struck me is how I allowed Satan, in a sense, because he's always at work as well, okay, steal the joy and the peace those early years of my career because I trusted in a coach's opinion who all he was trying to do was making me the best player he could make. That's his way of doing it. So now I've used this experience to coach kids and guys now, and I just thought about that and I said, wow, I can't believe I let him win there to steal joy that I could experience. Because every player, why you play, man, and if it's not fun and it's not enjoyable, something's wrong. We got to
Yeah.
figure something out.
I think that's what a great serendipitous for you to be able to bump into him and have that a little bit of closure, I guess, at some point
Oh,
in your
no, I
life.
know.
I
I
think
know.
that same thing happens for a lot of people, even in the business world. I think is it's this, I don't think my boss likes me or this
Yeah.
coworker I don't get along, and it or even a personal relationship, and maybe we are just internalizing that versus what's the reality, right? Maybe
No
there's a
doubt.
message being sent.
I bet, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's very high. 80, 90%, whatever that may be, of what we think somebody's thinking is really not true.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's, a lot of people that listen to this are involved in these conversations where they're talking to somebody who may have done something wrong,
Yeah.
commit a crime, maybe they're the victim of a crime, but you walk into these conversations with a bias often, and you've got this kind of perspective. This person, they don't like me, or their role is not to like me, or they're the
Yeah.
coach, they're supposed to be authoritative, but we're all humans
I
at the
know.
end of the day.
I know. One of the things I stay and I just had a recruit in here this morning, and I got another one here coming up this afternoon. One of the things that I say to them, I said, I just want you to know, and this may sound strange coming from a coach, especially at the college level. I said, I'm not here to win football games. I said, if I'm here to win football games, how shallow is that? I said, that's not me. I said, I'm here to build men of character. Okay. Or women in character when I coach girls, when in middle school, and I used to be a middle school coach in high school.
Right.
I had three daughters, so I was around girls sports a lot. But it's all the same lessons. And I want athletes to know if they're going to come to this team where coach stands. There's a lot of coaches out there like that, but there's a lot that are not either. And
Yeah.
I want to be that person that can have an impact on young adults.
Well, so you mentioned coaches, and of course, again, I have a bias, but I just think one of the most incredible coaches in league history is Marv Levy, and I know
Yeah.
you've had a lot of references to messages he's delivered, but I'm curious what his leadership style and kind of what has stuck with you, or any messages that maybe you learned from his coaching style that you've brought into
Um,
your own.
so many, so many. His picture's up on my wall for a reason. He is along with my father, who is still alive at 86, and Coach Levy's still alive at 98, I believe he is now. Just true mentors. Coach Levy taught me how to run a program. So a lot of the things that he would do, and the number one word that comes to me about Coach Levy, and this may sound shocking to a lot of people, but anybody that really truly knows him, which I believe is the one quality that every great leader has, is humility. And Coach Levy is as humble of a person that you could ever meet, and he's a Hall of Fame coach. You walk up to him, shake his hand, he's going to treat you like you've known him for years. That's who he is. When I finished my 6th year, they had decided, now we had done with the Super Bowl run. I played one more year in 94, and they were ready to go into a younger deal with younger kids, bringing younger guys, and my time in Buffalo was done. So I wasn't going to resign in Buffalo. And I wanted to play and finish out my career in Buffalo. I never wanted to leave. But Coach calls me in because he's a man of character, sits me down. He says, Donnie, I love you. He says, I'm so proud of what you've done for Buffalo. He says, I just want you to know that we're going to move in another direction. I got up, shook his hand, gave him a hug, and I appreciate that, because that's a man of character. That's what a man does. He didn't, phone call me or I find out in the media, okay, that I was released or they weren't going to re-sign me. No, he was a face-to-face guy. I've gotten away from that in our culture today,
Yeah.
but that is one thing I want to adhere to because of Coach Levy.
Yeah, I think that's powerful, especially in uh, the timeliness of us having this conversation. The Bills obviously just traded Stephon Diggs, so
Yeah,
huge name off the team, and
yeah,
but I was wondering that from a player's perspective, right? Of course, the media and the fans all have these theories about different things, but what does that
yeah.
communication typically look like from what's that emotional feel when you are hearing from a coach or a GM, and then I imagine there's got to be a conversation with your teammates, old and new, at some point. And how do you manage that life-changing event? And oh, by the way, you've got a family who's impacted at the same time.
Well, again, everybody's different in this area. Some handle it professionally, and they're a man of character, and some don't. Now, I don't know how the whole thing came down with Stefan, but um, you know, listen, I think most of the time it's done wrong. And there's a lot of hurt feelings and stuff of that nature. Listen, my respect and love for Coach Levy amplified even more, and I was not being asked to come back.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just like an oxymoron, right?
Right, right.
But when you do it the right way, your relationships last longer. It's the same thing in marriage. If you don't communicate, if you don't talk, what kind of marriage you got? You got to communicate, you got to talk, and that's what I always want to be able to do with every player on my team. I have 100. There's 106 at the end of the year on our roster. I had 106 meetings.
Hmm.
Every player, I gave them a time of day to talk with coach and find out where they stand. I gave them an honest assessment of what they can work on, and that's what a leader's got to do: communicate and do it humbly.
Yeah, and that's not just saying you have an open door policy. That's creating a culture of it. I think that's really
Yeah,
important.
absolutely. Words are cheap.
Yeah,
You got to
right.
live it. Like these
Well,
these players aren't stupid.
and so you've got this mentorship or guidance from coaches, and then I think about what's the value of teammates. And you mentioned some names. You guys, I can't just imagine that locker room. You're playing with Kelly and Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed and Lofton, and same thing. And again, in the business world and in the professional athlete world, I'm sure that there's silos, right? You've got the wide receiver room, you got the running back room, the quarterback room, but then you have an offense, and then you have a whole team. So what's that communication like? Does it tend to be more clicky or categorized, siloed, or is it a universal message across the board?
Well, what wins is chemistry. Talent doesn't win. X's and O's don't win to a certain degree. Uh, uh, First and foremost, you have to have chemistry. You really have to love the guys you're playing with. That's what made us great in Buffalo, I'll be honest with you. There was a group of about 24, 25 guys that went to all 4 Super Bowls. And so we had a very close group. We did a lot of things together. We golfed together. We vacationed together. We had Bible studies together. We did a lot of things together. And even though you had your groups that did their things and stuff of that nature, when we got on the bus, in the plane, and on the field, we all loved each other. We all cared about each other. Of that group that went to all 4 Super Bowls, I really truly don't believe you could find one of those guys say one bad thing about the other guys that went to 4, or anybody on the coaching staff, especially at the top. Not one guy would ever say bad thing about coach. So that, and then, Bill Poling and John Butler, who our general managers were. I mean, we loved those guys. They loved us. Ralph Wilson, it all starts really with him. I mean, the guy would show up in his corduroys at practice all the time because he cared about his guys. And he was one that really impacted me after the whole Leon Lett play and coming up to me and saying some things right after that game. That still resonates with me today.
Yeah.
That's what wins. Okay. You got to get breaks and things to go your way to win it all. Not always the most talented team wins, the Super Bowl or a national championship or a high school championship. You got to get breaks, but what wins consistently year in and year out is chemistry. And we had that in spades in Buffalo.
And I wonder, I think obviously we got Super Bowls we can talk about, and I want to obviously get to the Leon Lett play, which is inspiring for so many reasons. But I also think about now I think the second largest comeback in NFL history, but the game against the Oilers, and I think about this connection between team chemistry, character. What's the culture from, you just mentioned ownership down, and so again translating to the corporate world. What's the whole culture of an organization and the leadership? But you got this game. I think was it 93?
Yeah,
Yeah, 93.
93.
So
Yep.
down
92
38.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So down
Yeah.
38-3, which in
Yeah.
NFL standards, games all but over at that point.
Yep.
And I believe you caught a touchdown in the second half of
I
that
did. I
that
did.
game.
Yeah.
And the Bills come back, and I also think it's the one game that there was 4 million people in attendance at, apparently, because everybody in Buffalo claims they were there. But
Yeah.
how does, I guess, the concept you just mentioned, teamwork and culture of just supporting each other and the chemistry, is that a moment where that's what was relying on to make this ridiculous comeback and actually win that game?
Yeah. No doubt. Uh, Coach Levy always used to say that in every game, your character will be revealed, good or bad. Because when you have split seconds to react to something, that's your true character. That's really what's inside you. I mean, most good people, if you have a minute or a day and certainly a week, if you have time to think about it, most of us are going to make the right call. Yes, between yes and no, or right and wrong. But when you have to split second think about something and then react to it right away, that's your true character. Well, case in point, you talk to Coach, and believe me, when I took this job at Aurora University, who was one of the first people I called? Coach Levy. I had to go to dinner with him. I wanted to go to dinner, so my wife and I drove down and had dinner with Coach. And I said, hey, one of my first questions with him, I said, I just now I got a scout and I got a recruit, and I go, when you're looking at a left tackle or quarterback or DB or whatever it is, I said, what are you kind of looking for that? But he goes, before I ever get to that, Donnie, he says, I recruit 3 things: character, character, and character. If they don't pass the character test, I don't want them. I could care less what their talent was. And I was like, wow, and I understood that. And I knew that's how he built the program at Buffalo and the other teams that he was with. And it's so true. He said, you'll win a lot more games with character. And if you do lose, it's going to be a lot less pain dealing with, guys, right? Attitudes and egos and stuff of that nature, especially at the pro level. But now that's trickled down to high school. Now it's like, it's a different world now. So with that said, we get into a game like this and you're getting your tail whooped. You're all fired up. You're down 28-3, and boom, we throw a pick right out of the box, and Bubba McDowell takes it, and now it's 35-3. I'm going to tell you, a team without resilience and character and never giving up mentality, it's going to be a blowout. Well, how do I know that? I've seen it hundreds of times. Okay. You very rarely see what we did. Okay. Ever. And it's still, just so you know, it's still the greatest comeback in playoff history, just so you know. Okay.
Let's keep it that way. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I think it was because, and again, Frank was playing. Okay. And Frank is, from that same mold of, we just got to keep going. It was really Frank that kept pacing even after the pick, and we're down 38-3. Hey, let's just keep making plays. Not that he thought we could come back, but we're not going to quit mentality. And sure enough, things started to happen and it caught fire.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same. I mean, that team, obviously, and I'm sure you've dealt with this your whole career. You've had the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, but I know anybody from Buffalo, I wear a Bills shirt anywhere, and of course we got to hear about the 4 Super Bowl losses as though that's a negative thing. And I
Yeah,
think
right.
people forget how incredible is that a team had such a dynasty and a chemistry. But what you're just mentioning is you get to these games or moments in life where you've hit the pinnacle of how much you've worked for to get there, and then you don't cross that kind of final hurdle. What's
Yeah.
that? I don't even know if you can put it into words, and I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but what's that emotion like to get to that point, not get where you want to go, and then realize we can't even start from scratch and for another 6 more months until the season starts again?
Well, I remember what my attitude was, and certainly a lot of those guys, and that's why we kept going back, was, we would lose, fly back the next day. Man, I went right to the weight room. I wanted to go again. I couldn't wait to get to take that, seize that moment again. I never looked at it as, I don't ever want to go back. I can't believe we can't get this thing done. And I don't remember ever the attitude of the Buffalo Bills that way. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, because it does. You got to be able to understand people's perspective and opinions are great and fine, but it's their opinion. I mean, your identity can't be in that, because if it is, you're going to come up empty almost every time. And it's going to be a roller coaster emotional ride. I just want to be steady,
Yeah.
just steady, constantly going up, maybe take a little dip, but keep going up. Okay. Um, I just don't want to be in a roll. And I want to train my guys that way when I'm coaching them. It's a long season. It's a grind. We love the grind.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. And honestly, winning is much funner than losing. It really is. Um, but understand this: there's 32 NFL teams. There's 242 Division III teams. Guess what? At the end of the year, there's going to be 31 losers and 241 losers. Right? If you look at it from the world's perspective, the Buffalo Bills aren't losers. Heck no. One of the winningest programs in NFL history, especially during that stretch. And how many's been to 4 again? I'm sorry. That's right. Nobody. All right. So when you're the only one to do something, that's pretty special.
Right.
And that was a special group we had together, no doubt.
Yeah, what a great message. And there's been the consistency to a lot of what you said is kind of knowing who you are, knowing your identity, and being that person regardless of the situation. And
Yeah.
you referenced Leon Lett, and of course that's I'm sure a play that is your training and wanting to play in the NFL. Never thought this is going to be the play that people talk about as me somehow causing a fumble as a wide receiver, but. I'll let
Yeah.
you walk through the play because obviously you can relive that better than I can. But I just know that play is something that's just been symbolic of so much more than football. But I'll let you kind of
Yeah.
explain what was going on at the time.
Yeah. Now, again, this was, and you've touched on the devotional. This was the very first devotional that I talk about in the book,
Yeah.
Never Give Up book. And you just never know when that moment's going to be that God's going to use you. All right. Well, I'm going to give you the inside story of this from a faith-based standpoint, which was exactly what I was dealing with at that time. I always prayed before every game, but this game was special to me. This game was a deep prayer that I was very meaningful prayer, a prayer that I still remember today. Okay. But when I was a young kid growing up in mom's backyard, when I would dream about playing in the Super Bowl, because every kid does at 10, right? The place I wanted to play was Pasadena. I mean, Southern California, Fred Biletnikoff and Cliff Branch and Kenny Stabler, and they're playing in Pasadena at the Super Bowl. And I'm like, oh man, that would be so cool to be able to do that, huh? And I dream, and here I'm living my dream. I'm literally living my dream. Okay, like 20 years later, whatever, 25 years later. And so I remember going out before the game, an hour before the game. It's a beautiful Southern California day. And I took 2 laps around just thinking and kind of just mulling things over and taking it all in. And then I went to the 50-yard line. I took a knee. And my prayer was very simple. I said, Lord, let me glorify your name today more than any other time in my career. I do not want this to be about me. I want this to be solely about you. And that was my heart. And God knew my heart. And selfishly speaking, though, I got up and man, I felt really good, man. Dave, I mean, the adrenaline was going and I was like, I'm gonna score the touchdown to finally win this crazy game. That's what was going through my mind. This one-handed J.J. Jefferson stab in the back of the end
Right.
zone catch with no time on the clock, right? I would have been a hero
Right.
in Buffalo. But no, God gave me the Leon Lett play in a 52-17 blowout. And I always tell people, I try my hardest because I'm selfish. I'm a sinful nature guy, just like all of us. We're selfish. But in Christ, I'm not. And so what I tried hard to do is look at the big picture. What's the big picture? Eternity. Geez, we're going to be here 70, 80 years, maybe, right? Uh, if you saw that time frame on the eternity line, you probably wouldn't even see that dot. That's
Right.
how small of a time frame we're here. So we're called to impact people as far as men and women of faith. And this was my moment. So how many people, when I'm talking on something like this, or I'm on the stage speaking in front of whatever, or I'm coaching a bunch of guys, right, or girls, and I say to myself, how many people in this crowd right now can relate to scoring a touchdown to win a Super Bowl? Probably nobody. How many people can relate to never giving up? Everybody. And see, this is where God comes in. He knows what's best. His timing is always perfect. I always take the scripture Philippians 4:13, which everybody knows in the world of Christianity sports. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? I really believe in the world of sports, that's the most misconstrued scripture out there. And here's why. People pray it and they're all like, oh, I can do all things through Christ. I'm going to score the touchdown. That's me. I can do all things through Christ. I gave it to God. It's going to be great. Well, maybe not, right? Maybe not, because they misconstrue Paul's message from Philippians 4:11 and 4:12. And this is what I truly mean is the meaning of success in life. Here's my definition of success. And really, I'm stealing it for the Apostle Paul. Paul talked about, I've learned what it means to have nothing, and I've learned what it means to have everything, and everything in between. He says, I've learned the one thing that has allowed me to do the things I do, and that's contentment. Contentment is my definition of success. When you are right in the will of God and you're doing what God's called you to do, oh man, it doesn't get any better than that. It does not get any better than that. I love my job. Every day I wake up, I'm like, I don't ever remember the last time I actually woke up and said, oh God, I got to go to work. I'm tired. No, let's go, man. I'm one that hits my feet and I'm going. And so that's really kind of the whole inside thing. And I know Bills fans are out there. It's like, good night. Could you pray that God would have gave us victory? I get it.
Right.
It's funny.
Right.
And it's, and I'm sure that that's true. And believe me, I wanted it as well. But if I was to do it all again, and I had the other scenario happen, seeing how the impact that Leon Lett play has had on people's lives, I'm sorry, I'm taking the Leon Lett play because that's the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what's kind of fascinating is when you look back, for people, if they didn't watch the play, they need to watch the play. And this, I think it was the first NFL Play of the Year awarded when one of the top.
It was the first ESPY ever given for Play of the Year.
That's so incredible.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Yeah.
And it's a play that in the game, as you mentioned, is really meaningless as far as football is concerned, right? I mean, was there about 5 minutes left or so in the game?
Yeah, about 5 minutes since 52-17. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, to give people the insight of really what happened there, I mean, is we were just saving face and trying to score another touchdown, right? To make it look better than it really was.
Right.
And I'm running a fly pattern down the left side, a go route down the left side of the field. Nobody really knows how far I was. We just know it was at least 30 yards because the camera didn't even show me on the film, on the sideline video. And so Frank Reich, who's a quarterback, stepped up in the pocket, and Jeff Code, I think it was, caused a fumble, and Leon Lett picked it up right away. And he just started running for another touchdown, which would have set the all-time record for most points ever scored, 59. But he started to strut. And as Leon would tell you the story, which I got to give him credit because I've met him and we've become friends through all this, is that he uses the same play to tell people to never give up. Because if he would have ran as hard as he could and tucked it away, I'd have never caught him. He'd have scored. But because he slowed down and I knocked the ball out of his hands, right inside the 1 yard line, it became the Buffalo Bills ball at the 20 yard line going the other way. But this is one of the moral stories I want people to understand. And I go back to what Coach Levy says. In every game, your character will be revealed in a split second. Well, as I saw the fly pattern, running the fly pattern, I turned and saw the ball hit the ground and Leon picked it up, I took off. My character just took over and reacted. Why? My parents, coaches that I had when I was a kid, they taught me giving up is not an option. So that's just the way I was raised. That's not a switch you can just turn on and off.
Right.
It's either in you or it isn't you, right? And so that's why I always raised my 4 kids that way, because my mom and dad did the same to me. So then if I would have thought about it, I would have never knocked the ball out of his hands in time, because it happened already inside the 1 yard line. So how you react to something is really your true character. And if I didn't get him, guess what? Nobody would have said a word. Everybody would have said, "Hey, great effort," because you tried. And that's what's given me the platform of being that never give up guy, which, that's great. I love it.
Yeah. Well, so I'm also curious. I mean, I don't know if you can put yourself back in that moment, but as you're chasing him down, running like lightning, you got to be thinking, how am I going to tackle this guy? Like, there's
Yeah.
this instinct of, I mean, thankfully, I guess he sticks the ball out, but are you even processing what's the end game of this sprint I'm on, or am I just running
Yeah.
and hoping something happens?
Yeah. That's the question I get most often, actually. What were you thinking when you're running right in front of the Dallas bench, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, this was my thought, really. And you kind of said it. How am I going to tackle this guy? I mean, he's a mountain man. I mean, I'm just going to, jump on his back and he would roll me right out of the back of
Right.
the end zone. It would have been a football folly, right?
Right.
Uh, but then he just made the job easy by putting the ball out to the side like that. And I just knocked it all in my hands. But that, again, you're just reacting to things.
Yeah.
It's not like I sit here and think, oh gosh, if I knock it out, I'm going to be known as the never give up guy for eternity, right? No, 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 no.
Right.
Or God's going to use us in amazing ways. No,
Yeah.
you're just reacting. You're doing what you do.
Well, and really the last thing around that, I'm curious, and I've seen you talk about this, and I know the Four Falls of Buffalo is a really neat documentary where they highlighted some of that and other things, but and you talk about this, I know, again, you mentioned, and people can get this, I think it's donbeebe.com, real simple, to get your
Yep.
devotional, and
Yeah.
but the impact that play has had outside of football, I mean, obviously we're still talking about it today, but what's been the reception of that from just people in the community as a whole? I mean, you still get
Yeah.
asked about it. Has it been inspiring, obviously, to people? And what's that done after that,
Yeah.
30-second moment?
Sure. Well, this may sound crazy, but it's true. It, initially you watch my reaction. I was still upset. Leon falls, knees me in the head. I get up, adjust my face mask. I'm still upset. We're getting whooped. It didn't matter. I didn't care. Okay, what just happened? I had no idea what just happened. I was just doing my job. But when I got into the locker room and I was sitting in my locker, and the owner, Ralph Wilson, always comes in the locker room after games, right? And usually he's talking to a lot of different guys. And when he walked in, I was kind of noticed him, but I wasn't, but I noticed he literally was on a beeline right for me, passing other players, passing other guys, media, just coming right to me. And he stood in front of me and he said, "Son," didn't call me Don Beebe, number 82 or anything like that. He said, "Son," he said, "you showed exactly what Buffalo Bills are all about. And you showed exactly why we drafted you and all those things that were really nice because of your heart." And he says, "That's what Buffalo's all about. Thank you." And then it said, wow, it meant a lot to him. That was my first, it meant a lot to him. I still didn't kind of resonate. And then Scott Birchtold, the head of, marketing, then, calls me down because I had to go to the media room. Well, nobody wants to go to the media room after a Super Bowl loss. Trust me.
Sure.
I was like, tell Jim to go. I don't want to go. Right. But they said, no, they want to talk to you about this play. I was like, what play? Because I scored a touchdown in that game. And I was like, that was insignificant. He goes, no, running them down. I was like, so I went down there, and I'm telling you, Dave, I had more mics in my face than any other time in my entire career. I mean, there were hundreds of mics just in my face. Why? What made you do that? So I would just start sharing with them. And then when I got back to One Bills Drive, Orchard Park, New York, wow, Dave, I'm not talking about little boxes. I'm talking about big UPS boxes just filled with fan mail letters every day. I mean, hundreds in these fan mail boxes every day. And I joked with Kelly. I said, "Man, I'm getting way more fan mail than you get," which was kind of a joke. But, and you know what? That still continues today. I get at least several, maybe 1 or 3, and sometimes more, every single day. And what are we, 25 to 30 years later? And we're still talking about this play. And I get fan mail letters telling me about this play, how it impacted their lives and everything of this nature. One of the reasons why I wrote this devotional, and we called it Never Given Up.
Yeah.
Because that's who people know me by, and it's just given me such a great platform. Again, the big picture of what really playing sports is all about.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
I think that's incredible. You mentioned helmet, earlier, so I had to. I showed Don this before, but I've
Yeah,
got this old school. We got the standing buffalo. I gotta
yeah.
ask, what's your favorite Buffalo Bills uniform?
Oh, I like the blue. I mean, the blue, and I really like the blue with the white helmet. I mean, I don't mind the red helmet that we wore because I like red, white, and blue. I love those colors for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
Um, but I really like the blue with the white.
yeah. As
It's
long
pretty
as
slick.
as long as you're winning, it always looks good.
Oh
I
no,
guess.
there's no doubt. Yeah,
Well,
no
and
doubt.
and before we wrap up, we've talked a lot about your Bills career. Obviously, you went on and to the Panthers, and I know you got to work with Frank Wright continuously, and that was a huge support in your career. And I think
Yeah,
that just, from what I read about your devotional, it just demonstrates more about the power of, friendship and support for each other.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah,
then you get to go to the Packers and you win a Super Bowl, which is incredible. But really, what you're doing now and kind of post NFL career of spreading all these messages to youthful athletes and parents. And I know you've got the House of Speed, and you've been extremely successful at Aurora University. And so
yeah,
I want to make sure we got a couple minutes just to talk about, what you're doing now and how you're conveying the same message to athletes and just people of the future.
yeah. Let me tell you about. First of all, you mentioned Frank in Carolina because there's a real story there for athletes to understand and people in general. Okay, we're just talking about athletes, but this can apply to anything in life. Um, and I think it's the third devotional. It's called "Keep Suiting Up," and it's like it's let the title, the subtitle is "Let God Fight Your Battles." Right. So I go to Carolina. Frank signs with the Panthers. It's the inaugural season now, '95, and they tell Frank he's going to be the man. Great. Okay. After being back up to Jim all these years, man, what a great opportunity for Frank. And I want to say it was about a month later. I wanted to go to Carolina. We finally worked out a deal, and I signed with the Panthers. And they're telling me I'm going to be the number one receiver because I had the most experience in Super Bowls and playoffs and all that. And Bill Polian was the general manager. Okay, he went down to the Panthers and started that franchise. I mean, if there ever was a perfect scenario as an athlete that you're going into, oh, this was great. I mean, I couldn't wait to get to Carolina. It was an utter disaster, an utter disaster. Okay, I get down there, third practice, I break my rib. Okay, I was out a few weeks. I was the number one guy initially with Mike Carrier. Me and Mark were, another great receiver. And I come back and I lose my position. Okay, matter of fact, I'm hardly playing because the season's about to start. I got I think in the last preseason game, and then the regular season started. So I was MF'd. I was made to be felt like I've never played before. I mean, I got not made fun of, but just always criticized. And really self pity started to settle in. It was like, and again, I was basing my opinion off a coach, right? Um, and Frank was kind of battling the same thing, but that's Frank's story. But what was important, okay, is that Frank is a true man of God. We were really good friends, and we just started sharing. We would go in hotel rooms. And what do guys do when they go in hotel rooms, right? They flip the TV on. Not Frank and I. We would just sit there and talk. We would read scripture. We'd pray for each other. And I knew what he was going through. He knew what I was going through. And that's why I always tell people, center yourself around godly people, okay, that help you get through the battles of life. Because I was going through one. And I'm telling you, I wanted to quit. I didn't want to go to practice. This is the first time in my life I was just like, I'm done. And so bitterness starts setting in. And when you allow bitterness to set in, it starts to ruin you from the core. And then it ruins your relationships with your wife, your kids, and people you work with, and it's just horrible. And boy, after the pandemic, I mean, this just came out in so many people, right? But no, Frank and I started praying for each other. We started relying on God's opinion, and we started giving it to the Lord every morning and on our knees and reading His Word. And things started to change for me internally. So my attitude to going to practice, man, I loved going to practice, and I was balling, I was killing it, and Frank was too. And him being the backup quarterback to Kerry Collins, and me being a backup wideout, we were always throwing it to each other, right? Um, but did my circumstance change? No, no, I was still MF'd. I still made to be feel like I don't fit in and that I couldn't play and all those things. It didn't change. But me, who I was, in handling the situation, I was bound to determine I was not going to let Satan win, in a sense. Okay, I was going to let God control it. So after that was year, I got released from my first time I ever got cut. I had a 2-year deal, and they released me. Dom Capers called me, who I love. Dom Capers, by the way. I think he's a true man of character. And I was released. Man, I felt terrible. I was like, well, I'm kind of glad because I didn't want to go through that again. But God, you got something for me. And where did he take me? The Green Bay Packers. And not only did he take me to Green Bay Packers, but statistically, I had the most touchdowns, most yards. We win a Super Bowl. And who do we beat in the NFC Championship to go to the Super Bowl? That's right, the Carolina Panthers. God has a sense of humor, doesn't he? Anyway, I had no bitterness, though. Seriously. But this is what I want people to know and understand. Is that if I would allow the bitterness to set it in, I think I would have ended my career. And look what the blessings I would have missed out on. If we just let God fight the battles, and that's why I go to, again, Scripture again, and Romans 12:14-21, it talks about this. These are his battles. Let him fight him. You don't have to. You just get on your knees and let him open and close the doors, and he will, as long as you let him. But if you don't, you're going to miss out on God's blessings. And so I've just continued on these stories that God's given me and revealed to me. And all I'm doing is just coaching kids and helping them through their lives and going through this. And now at the college level, I spend more time, Dave, in my office talking about how to build yourself up in a man of character and those things than football, by far. Okay. And that for me is way more satisfying than winning football games.
Yeah, that's a powerful closing message, and I got one more question around that before
Sure.
we wrap up. When you're dealing with the athletes themselves and student athletes, you're also
Yeah.
dealing with parents of all
Yep.
varieties, I'm sure, and you got a lot of parents listening that might have very youthful athletes just getting in to the game
Yeah.
or any game. What message do you have for parents that how can they better support or maybe get out of the way at the same time?
Well, I mean, it's a great lead in because I'm now in the process and I'm about halfway through. I'm writing a parent devotional around athletics and how do we deal with the coach and what do we teach our son and daughters when they're 10, 8, 18, whatever it is, because you're constantly teaching your kids, right? Hopefully the right things. And I had great examples of my mom and dad. And hopefully I've raised my kids in this perspective. Um, but yeah, that when I was in high school, I think I witnessed to fathers as much as I did the son and talked them off the shelf a lot of times or the ledge. Um, and that's fine. Now, once I got to college, I don't deal with the parent hardly ever now, which is fine because these are grown men. These guys are on their own right now. And the best time for them to learn is right now because they're on their own. And then sometimes, I hate to say this, I'm glad they are away from their parent. No offense to parents, but um, that's typically the biggest problem with kids. It's not always the kids that are the ones thinking this. It's the dinner table. It's the drive home that's making them think these things. Because the parents want it so bad, and I understand that because I've been that. You want it so bad, but you just can never cross that line. Of what's best for my kids spiritually than a contract or a Division I scholarship or leading the team in catches. I don't know.
Right.
Just understand your role. What that is God's role, and be the best that you can be, and good things will happen. There's no way I should have played in the NFL. There's no way my son should have played in the NFL. Believe me. Okay, God, if you knew my story and you knew my son's story, incredible how God used us through sports.
Yeah. Well, and with that, I want people to make sure they know that your uh, stories are so accessible, right? Again, I know
Yeah,
donbeebe.com is an easy way to get to it, but you got the devotional, you got another book on there, and then I know more to come. And so I'll let
yeah.
you kind of explain any of that you'd like. And then my last question to wrap us up, if you had the chance to go into a locker room tomorrow, maybe the Buffalo Bills locker room, who need one more push to get to the edge, but when I say locker room, it could be a corporate meeting, it could be a family situation, it could be a locker room. But what's that one key message that you want to leave people with to think about to just be a better
Yeah.
version of themselves?
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say to any team or business, and I've done this, is we all come from different walks of life, all different backgrounds. We all have our own thoughts, and you know, and to a certain degree, we're all kind of selfish, and we think we know it all. No, you don't. Okay, none of us do. Uh, but we need to communicate, and I think that's one of the things that in the teams that I was on, from the guy that never plays, the 53rd guy, or the star guy in Jim Kelly or Brett Favre. We always communicated. We spent time together. Time is a very precious commodity. And don't just go home, which, yeah, go home and your wife and kids, and that's great. But, you got to spend time with your family, and your family really is your football team or the organization, and get to know that person. Because, again, when you get to know the person, the chances of you thinking negative, what you think they might be thinking of you, is far less when you really know them. When you're in a business office and you don't really know anybody. I'm a coach, and I know every coach in every sport, men and women at Roy University. Okay? You get to know them. You invest in their lives. And the players, same thing. From the player that will never play at AU to our star quarterback, I know them all. I know their name. I know what position they are. I know what number they are. And you get to know them. Well, that makes not only them feel valuable, but it opens up the door of communication. And that's ultimately what makes the whole team much, much better.
Yeah, that's perfect wrap up. And I think consistent message throughout. So I thank you for your time. I could talk to you all day. So I appreciate the time and the messages. And I just want to thank everybody for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told. Make sure to go find out more about Don. I know, again, you offer a lot of services to support youthful athletes out there, but also just support your message to the community at large. So thanks for your time, and go Bills.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And to keep this conversation going, follow the Truth Be Told podcast on LinkedIn and Truth Be Told CFI on Twitter. On behalf of the International Association of Interviewers, Rick Lander-Zalowski, and our valued sponsors, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast.